Space was cold and unforgiving as Croc Cran, recorder of the 4th class and minor official to the Galactic Historical Archives, drifted through the debris field. My small craft shuddered as another piece of twisted metal scraped against our hull. The pilot, a stoic umbukudo named Tral, said nothing. There was nothing to say. The wreckage around us told the story more eloquently than any words could. I adjusted my breathing apparatus. The methane-rich atmosphere of my homeworld, a distant memory among the standardized oxygen mix that had become the norm for interspecies vessels. Ahead of us, visible through the forward viewport, lay the twinkling lights of humanity's outermost colony, New Mars. A modest space station orbited the rust-colored planet, its architecture unremarkable and utilitarian. "Hard to believe," Tral finally muttered, breaking our hours-long silence. "That they did all this. All this. The understatement of the galactic age. All around us, for kilometers in every direction. The remains of the once mighty Katanaki Armada drifted lifelessly in the void. 2,000 ships, nearly 3 million crew. Gone." I toggled my recorder, making sure it captured the endless field of destruction. The historical archives needed this documented. Future generations needed to understand what had happened when the galaxy's mightiest empires decided to welcome humanity into the fold. Humans. The very word now sent shivers through the chitinous exoskeletons of 100 species. Yet they had arrived on the galactic scene barely 30 galactic months ago. Naive, open, broadcasting their every secret to the cosmos as if information were not the most valuable currency in existence. 6 systems. That was all they claimed. 6 unremarkable star systems on the galactic rim, deemed worthless by the established powers centuries ago. Their entry into interstellar travel had been noted, logged, and largely ignored. Another primitive species finding their way to the stars, soon to be assimilated or subjugated like countless others before them. How wrong we had been. I had been assigned to this story when the first whispers reached the archives. The mighty Katanaki Empire, rulers of 63 systems and possessors of the galaxy's 3rd largest fleet, had launched what they termed a security operation into human space. 2,000 ships, a show of force meant to intimidate the newcomers into immediate vassalage. No one expected resistance. Certainly no one expected what followed. "Approaching New Mars Station," Tral announced, his vocal sacs vibrating nervously. "They've granted us docking permission. You're sure about this?" I wasn't sure about anything anymore, but I had a job to do. The invitation was clear. They've agreed to tell their side of the story. Tral's compound eyes flickered with doubt. "No one who's gone to interview them has returned." "That's not true," I corrected him. "The Sereni ambassador returned." "Missing 3 limbs," Tral countered. The official report stated it was an accident during their tour. Tral's mandibles clicked in what might have been a laugh. "And you believe that?" I didn't answer. The truth was, I didn't know what to believe anymore. The galaxy I had known my entire life, ordered, hierarchical, predictable, had been turned upside down in less than a galactic year. Everything we thought we knew about power, about warfare, about diplomacy, it had all been shattered like the hulls of the ships surrounding us. As we docked at the human station, I gathered my recording equipment and prepared to disembark. My assignment was clear: document the rise of humanity, their unprecedented military victories, and assess their threat level to galactic stability. But privately, I had another mission. I needed to understand these creatures. I needed to know how a species with barely 6 systems had brought the combined might of the galaxy to its knees. The airlock cycled, and I stepped into the human station. My first impression was one of stark functionality. The docking bay lacked the ornate decorations favored by the Katanaki, or the bioluminescent living walls of my people's stations. Everything was metal, composite, and purpose-built. The air was drier than I preferred, but within my tolerance range. A single human waited for me, bipedal, wrapped in some kind of blue fabric uniform, with exposed skin on its face and hands that seemed unnervingly vulnerable. No exoskeleton, no protective scales or fur, just soft, pink-beige flesh. "Recorder Croc Cran," the human said, pronouncing my name with surprising accuracy. "Welcome to New Mars Station. I'm Captain Eliza Morgan, your liaison during your stay." I performed the traditional greeting gesture of my people, pressing my primary appendages together. "I am honored by your reception, Captain Morgan. I confess I was unsure if my request would be granted." The human's face moved in what I had learned was called a smile, a gesture that could indicate anything from pleasure to imminent aggression. "We've had our fill of military delegations and diplomatic missions. A historian is a welcome change." As she led me through the station, I observed everything carefully. The corridors were populated with humans going about their duties, occasionally glancing at me with expressions I couldn't read. None seemed particularly impressed or intimidated by my presence, which was unusual. Most species showed deference to archive recorders. "You'll be staying in our visitor quarters," Captain Morgan explained. "We've adjusted the atmospheric conditions to match your homeworld specifications. Your pilot is welcome to remain with your vessel or join you in the accommodations." "He will stay with the vessel," I said quickly, knowing Tral would prefer the security of his own ship. "If that is acceptable." "Of course," she replied. "Now, I understand you wish to document the recent events." The delicacy of her phrasing was almost amusing, given the scale of what had occurred. "Yes. The archives seek to understand what transpired between humanity and the various galactic powers over the past 12 galactic months." Captain Morgan's expression shifted subtly. "You mean they want to know how we destroyed their fleets?" Her directness caught me off guard. Most species employed elaborate verbal dances before addressing such matters. "That is one aspect of my inquiry. Yes." She stopped walking and turned to face me directly. "Recorder Cran, let me be clear. We've agreed to this interview because we believe the galaxy should understand what happened and why. But we have conditions." "I expected as much," I admitted. "You'll have access to our public records, selected military personnel for interviews, and supervised tours of non-sensitive areas. You'll see exactly what we want you to see. No more." I bobbed my head in acknowledgement. "That is more access than I anticipated." The human made that expression again, the smile, but this time it didn't reach her eyes. "We have nothing to hide anymore. Recorder. That's a luxury we lost when the first invasion came." As she continued leading me through the station, I activated my neural recorder, knowing that the real story, the one that had reshaped galactic politics forever, had begun long before my arrival. It had started, as these things often do, with greed, arrogance, and a catastrophic underestimation. The Katanaki Empire had been the first to move against humanity. Their emperor, the illustrious Zorthak IX, had watched with growing interest as human broadcasts revealed technological capabilities that, while primitive by galactic standards, showed surprising innovation. When their mineral surveys suggested rich deposits of rare elements in human-claimed systems, the decision was made. 2,000 ships, 3 million troops, led by Grand Admiral Vexcor, the Empire's most decorated military commander. Their mission was simple, a show of overwhelming force to compel immediate surrender, followed by the installation of a puppet government that would grant the Katanaki exclusive mining rights. Standard procedure. It had worked on dozens of emerging civilizations before. The Armada entered human space with great ceremony, broadcasting their arrival on all frequencies, as was Katanaki custom. They expected immediate capitulation, perhaps some token resistance quickly crushed to make the point. Instead, there was silence. For 3 days. As the Armada approached Earth, humanity's homeworld, there was no response to any communication. On the fourth day, the entire Katanaki fleet disappeared. 2,000 ships, gone without a trace. No distress signals, no debris, nothing. When news reached the galactic core, it was dismissed as a communication error. Surely the mighty Katanaki fleet couldn't simply vanish. But as days stretched into weeks with no word, panic began to spread through the imperial court. The Serini Collective, longtime rivals of the Katanaki, saw an opportunity. If the Katanaki had somehow been defeated, perhaps their mysterious new technology could be acquired by a more diplomatic approach. They dispatched their own fleet, smaller, only 800 vessels, but equipped with their latest quantum shift drives and phase shields. They too disappeared within human territory. That was when the first image was broadcast from Earth. A simple visual, a lone human cruiser, unremarkable in design, hovering before the shattered remains of what was unmistakably a Serini dreadnought. No message accompanied the image. None was needed. The galaxy reeled. I emerged from my recollection as Captain Morgan showed me to my quarters, a modest but comfortable room that had indeed been adjusted to my environmental preferences. "You'll find a terminal here with access to the approved historical records," she explained. "Tomorrow, you'll meet with Admiral Chen." She paused, consulting her communication device. "I apologize. There's been a change. You'll be meeting with Admiral Reynard instead. He commanded our defense forces during the third incursion." I tried not to show my relief. The name Chen had appeared in several fragmentary reports that had reached the archives, always associated with particularly devastating human counterattacks. The being was something of a bogeyman among the survivors. "That would be most informative," I said, "if possible. I would also like to understand how humanity developed its unique defensive capabilities without detection." Captain Morgan's expression hardened slightly. "All approved technological discussions will be covered in your briefings. Recorder, for now, I suggest you rest and acclimate to our station." She left me alone with my thoughts and the terminal. As I settled into the environment-controlled chamber, I began to browse through the offered materials. Most were surprisingly basic. Historical accounts of human development, their pre-stellar civilization, their first interplanetary colonies. Nothing about their devastating military technology. Nothing about how they had managed to defeat the combined might of 6 galactic empires, with what appeared to be a fraction of the resources. I cycled my breathing apparatus and prepared for a long night of study. The real answers, I suspected, would not be found in these sanitized records. The next morning, by the station's artificial cycle, I was escorted to a conference room where Admiral Reynard awaited. He was older than Captain Morgan, with skin wrinkled by age and hair that had lost its pigmentation. He stood as I entered, his posture straight despite his apparent years. "Recorder Cran," he greeted me. "Please, be seated. I understand you have questions about our conflicts with the various armadas that entered our territory." I settled into the specially designed chair and activated my recorder. "Admiral, I appreciate your willingness to speak with me. The archives seek to understand the sequence of events from humanity's perspective." The Admiral nodded. "A fair request. Where would you like to begin?" "Perhaps with the Katanaki incursion," I suggested. It was the first, and still the most mysterious. Admiral Reynard's face remained impassive. "There's no great mystery from our perspective. Recorder, the Katanaki entered our sovereign territory with an invasion force. We defended ourselves." "But how?" I couldn't keep the frustration from my voice. 2,000 ships don't simply vanish without explanation. "Don't they?" The Admiral's expression remained unchanged. "You've seen the debris field you docked through? Not all our encounters left such visible evidence." I felt a chill run through my circulatory system. "Are you suggesting that humanity possesses the capability to not only destroy, but completely eradicate matter?" For the first time, the Admiral smiled. It was not reassuring. I'm not suggesting anything. Recorder. I'm merely stating facts. The Katanaki fleet entered our territory. It is no longer there. The how is, frankly, classified. This was getting me nowhere. I changed tack. After the Katanaki and Sereni, there were 4 more attempts by different powers to, as they termed it, secure human space. Each ended in failure. Yet humanity made no move to counterattack, to expand beyond your 6 systems. Why? The question seemed to interest the Admiral. He leaned forward slightly. Why would we? We have what we need. 6 systems, rich in resources, sufficient for our population. We never sought galactic dominion. But you possess military superiority. I pressed. Most species would use such an advantage to expand their territory, ensure their security. Most species, Admiral Reynard said quietly, aren't human. Before I could follow up on that cryptic response, the door opened and Captain Morgan entered. Admiral, I apologize for the interruption, but the Umbakudo delegation has arrived early. They're requesting immediate audience. The Admiral stood. Duty calls, recorder. Captain Morgan will continue your tour of the station. We can resume our discussion tomorrow. I was being dismissed, and I knew better than to protest. As the Admiral left, Captain Morgan gestured for me to follow her. I can show you our agricultural section, she offered. It might provide context for our sustainable approach to colonization. It wasn't what I had come for, but I nodded agreement. As we walked, I tried a different line of questioning. Captain, most accounts suggest that humanity was broadcasting openly before the first incursion, sharing your technological developments, your cultural works, even your military capabilities. Why? Captain Morgan glanced at me. Because that's who we are, or were. Open communication, free exchange of ideas. These were foundational values. We assumed other intelligent species would share such values. A dangerous assumption, I noted. Yes, she agreed, her voice hardening. We learned that lesson painfully. We had reached the agricultural section, a vast chamber filled with growing plants in hydroponic arrangements. The efficiency was impressive, far more productive than similar setups I had seen on other stations. This is how we feed our population, Captain Morgan explained. Completely self-sufficient, using minimal resources. We apply the same philosophy to all our systems. Efficient, I acknowledged. But it doesn't explain how a species with 6 systems defeated armadas from empires controlling hundreds. Captain Morgan stopped beside a tank growing some kind of floating green vegetation. Have you heard of Sun Tzu, Recorder Cran? The name meant nothing to me. A human military leader? A military philosopher? From our ancient history. He wrote that all warfare is based on deception. She reached into the tank, adjusting something I couldn't see. When capable, feign incapacity. When active, inactivity. I began to understand. You're suggesting humanity deliberately presented itself as weaker than it was? I'm not suggesting anything, she said, echoing the Admiral's earlier response. I'm simply sharing a piece of human cultural history. Before I could press further, my communication device chimed. It was Trowel, sounding agitated. Recorder, you need to return to the docking bay immediately. Something's happening. Captain Morgan didn't seem surprised. Your pilot has good timing. You might find what's occurring educationally valuable. When we reached the docking bay, I understood why. Through the massive observation windows, I could see a fleet approaching the station. The design was unmistakable. Umbakudo dreadnoughts. Their distinctive split-hull configuration, marking them as capital ships from the Empire's core fleet. What is this? I demanded, turning to Captain Morgan. Another invasion? She shook her head. No, a surrender. As I watched, astonished, the Umbakudo fleet took up position at a respectful distance from the station. A single shuttle detached from the lead vessel and approached the docking bay. The Umbukudo Empire controlled over 120 systems, I said, struggling to comprehend what I was seeing. They field the largest navy in the known galaxy. They did, Captain Morgan corrected gently, until they made the mistake of following the Sereni into our territory 3 months ago. The shuttle docked, and a delegation of Umbukudo officials emerged. Their normally proud bearing was absent, their posture submissive as they were met by a small group of human officers. "What are they surrendering?" I asked, unable to tear my gaze away from the unprecedented sight. "Mining rights in 30 systems," Captain Morgan replied. "Reparations for their attempted invasion, and a formal declaration of humanity as a protected neutral power." I turned to her, mandibles slack with shock. 30 systems? The Umbukudo are giving you 30 systems? "We're not taking them," she said. "We don't want them. The rights are being redistributed to smaller powers that have shown respect for our boundaries." It made no sense. No species in recorded history had won such a victory, only to decline territorial expansion. "Why?" Captain Morgan's expression grew serious. "Because territory isn't what we value. Recorder. Security is. We have established a single principle. Leave us in peace, and we will do the same." I looked back at the Umbukudo delegation, now being escorted deeper into the station. "And those who don't leave you in peace?" Her gaze followed mine. "They learn, eventually." The following days brought more revelations, as I was granted interviews with various human military personnel and civilian officials. Each shared pieces of the story, though none revealed the critical technological secrets I sought. Still, a picture began to emerge. After the first 6 attempted invasions had been repelled, 3 of the remaining galactic powers, the Omora Sovereignty, the Kokoi Dominion, and the Harbinger Collective, formed an unprecedented alliance. Together, they assembled the largest fleet ever recorded, 15,000 vessels from across their combined territories. They did not immediately attack. Instead, they sent a diplomatic mission, inviting humanity to a grand ceremony at a neutral location, the ancient space station, known as the Nexus, built by a long-vanished precursor species. Humanity accepted. They sent a single vessel, carrying a delegation of 7 representatives. The ceremony was magnificent, broadcast across all galactic channels. The combined fleet arrayed in perfect formation around the Nexus. A display of power and precision meant to impress or intimidate the human delegates. Admiral Raynard had been among those 7. He described the event during our second interview. "We knew what it was," he told me, his aged eyes distant with memory. "A trap disguised as a peace offering. The station was surrounded. Our ship was scanned continuously. They believed they had us cornered." "But you attended anyway," I noted. "Of course," he nodded. "It was an opportunity we couldn't ignore." "To do what?" The Admiral's gaze refocused on me. "To end the conflict once and for all." What happened next had been witnessed by billions across the galaxy. As the ceremony reached its apex, with the leaders of the 3 powers delivering grand speeches about galactic harmony and protected status for humanity, an old-style human cruiser drifted into formation with the combined fleet. No one had detected its approach. No sensors had registered its presence until it was already among them. Panic erupted on the command channels. Orders were given to destroy the intruder, but before a single weapon could be brought to bear, the human cruiser changed. There is no other word for it. One moment it was a solitary vessel. The next, it seemed to multiply, as dozens, no hundreds, of previously invisible human ships deactivated some kind of cloaking technology and revealed themselves, already in perfect firing position throughout the enemy formation. What followed was not a battle. It was an execution. With simultaneous precision strikes, the human vessels fired what appeared to be simple kinetic weapons, railguns launching nuclear-tipped projectiles at relativistic speeds. The effect was devastating. A third of the combined fleet was cleaved apart in seconds. And on every screen across the galaxy, the human delegation stood calmly watching from the Nexus as the mightiest armada ever assembled was systematically dismantled. It wasn't just a military victory, Admiral Renard explained, his voice solemn. It was a message, one that couldn't be misinterpreted. That humanity could have destroyed them at any time, I said. Precisely. We chose when and how to reveal our capabilities. We chose the extent of the damage inflicted. And most importantly, we chose to leave 2/3 of their fleet intact. As a demonstration of mercy, I suggested. The Admiral's expression hardened. As a demonstration of control. Had we wished to annihilate them, we could have. They needed to understand that their survival was our choice, not their achievement. The message was received. Within days, every major power in the galaxy had sued for peace with humanity. Non-aggression pacts were signed. Trade agreements were hastily proposed. The few who resisted, primarily pirate clans and slaver guilds who saw human territory as ripe for raiding, were dealt with swiftly and mercilessly. One particularly notorious slaver kingpin, who had boasted that he would capture humans for the exotic pet trade, found his orbital dockyards reduced to atoms. He himself vanished, though rumors persisted that he had been taken by humans for study. In his place, a simple holographic message was left floating where his headquarters had stood. We warned you. It became humanity's unofficial motto. The phrase appeared as graffiti on space stations across the galaxy. It was whispered in diplomatic circles whenever another power contemplated testing human patience. After the initial shock and fear came curiosity. Human biology, culture, art, all became subjects of intense interest. Species that had previously dismissed humans as primitive now analyzed their every broadcast, searching for clues to their mysterious power. Trade delegations arrived at human stations bearing precious gifts. Cultural exchanges were proposed. A few brave scholars requested permission to study under human teachers. And humanity, to the surprise of many, began to cautiously open their doors once more. Which brought me to my final day at New Mars Station, and my most illuminating conversation. I was preparing to depart when Captain Morgan appeared at my quarters. The Admiral has authorized something special for your final day. Recorder, if you're interested. Intrigued, I followed her to a section of the station I hadn't previously visited. The security was noticeably heavier here, with multiple checkpoints and scan procedures. This is our cultural repository, Captain Morgan explained, as we entered a vast chamber filled with artifacts. We've been collecting art and historical objects from across the galaxy for decades, even before we achieved interstellar travel. I stared in amazement at the collection. Sculptures from the ancient Serini artisan clans, tapestries woven by the gas-dwelling Volocris, even several pieces I recognized from my own people's classical period. How? I asked, gesturing at the treasures surrounding us. Some of these would never have been traded or sold. Captain Morgan's expression was unreadable. Let's just say that after certain military encounters, we recovered items that had been stolen from their original owners. We've been quietly returning them when possible. I moved deeper into the collection, marveling at its breadth. This isn't what I expected. No, there was amusement in her voice. I expected weapons, technology, military secrets. Those exist too, she acknowledged. But they're not what defines us. At the center of the chamber stood a curious display. A simple pedestal, holding what appeared to be an ancient, bound collection of paper. A book, I recalled from my research. This, Captain Morgan said, is what the Admiral thought you should see. I approached cautiously. What is it? Our first message to the stars. Before we had achieved interstellar travel, we sent thousands of these aboard automated probes. It contains art, music, mathematics, poetry, the essence of humanity. as we understood it then. I examined the artifact without touching it. And now? Now we understand that the galaxy isn't always receptive to open hands. Her tone had grown serious. But that doesn't mean we've abandoned what we are. She gestured to the surrounding collection. This is why we fought. Not for territory or resources or power, for the right to exist as ourselves, to create, to explore, to connect. Yet you developed weapons capable of destroying fleets, I pointed out. Because we had to, she said simply. The galaxy taught us that lesson. As we returned to the docking bay where Trowell waited nervously with our vessel, Captain Morgan had one final surprise. We've reviewed your records and reports to your archives, she said. We find them acceptably accurate. I wasn't sure whether to be flattered or offended. I document what I observe. Yes, which is why we're extending an offer. She handed me a data crystal. This contains an invitation for a cultural exchange. We would welcome an artist from your people to spend time aboard our stations, documenting our way of life. I took the crystal, stunned. An artist? Not a diplomat or scientist? Captain Morgan smiled. A genuine expression this time, without the edge I had grown accustomed to. We've had our fill of diplomats and scientists. Recorder. They see only what they expect to see. An artist might see us as we truly are. As I boarded my vessel, data crystal, clutched carefully in my appendage, I reflected on all I had witnessed. The human station shrunk in our viewport as Trowell piloted us away, back through the debris field that stood as testament to the galaxy's arrogance. We had come seeking secrets of warfare, of technology, of power. What I had found instead was perhaps more valuable, and certainly more dangerous. I had glimpsed a species of contradictions, capable of terrible destruction, yet devoted to beauty, willing to annihilate those who threatened them, yet refusing to expand beyond their needs. Initially naive in their openness, yet surgically precise in their vengeance. The archives would get their report. The galaxy would continue to tremble at the name of humanity for generations to come. But perhaps, just perhaps, what began with humiliation and war might end with something more hopeful. As we cleared the debris field and prepared for FTL jump, I secured the data crystal in my personal effects. The artist who received this invitation would need to be brave, curious, and open-minded, qualities that had become rare in a galaxy grown complacent with its own power. But then, we had all learned a valuable lesson from humanity's rise. Never judge by appearances. Never assume weakness where there might be strength. And above all, heed the warning when it comes. Because as billions across the galaxy now knew, humanity's patience had limits, and those who tested them did so at their peril. We had been warned, and finally, we were listening.